Space is definitely one of the new frontiers that is challenging humans' curiosity. Not new from the standpoint of research, but it's becoming a common denominator, common subject of a discussion. Is if you're in space, you can compete on Earth. My question is, are we about to discover new forces of universe to help us explore this journey better, deeper? Can we dream about population of other planets before we resolve the fundamental challenges about humanity on our home planet?
The reason that we don't see other beings in many of the different worlds in the galaxy and in the universe is because it may be, according to Kardashev, that the jump from one level of civilization to the next is so far impossible to attain. Either that, or they have managed the energy flows of their each level, and we don't see the waste energy. Because if you look at the solar system, our solar system, from outer space, there are two things that are glowing: the sun and planet Earth. Why does planet Earth glow? Because we radiate so much excess waste heat or waste energy into space. The challenge of mastering the energy flows of your planet technologically bring with them the risks of possible self-destruction. Challenge for the 21st century is not technology, but it's morality, it's ethics. Can we be not just our planet? Can we be extracted from it and go elsewhere without the supportive living field that is the entire planet?
Space. The main question in my head is, as it sounds so intriguing, to not only explore space but actually inhabit space, so inhabit worlds beyond this Earth, planet Earth. I do have concerns. If we expand our being as humans with the consciousness we have today even wider, we will bring all the, let's say, impacts we have already created and brought into conflicts here on the planet Earth to further habitats. So instead of solving a problem, we may just expand the problems. What I see today is expansion of our mindset, then actually an evolution of our mindset that will create something that brings us into another connection we have not yet.
Is the universes that we're going to be exploring really is this the physical expansion of the universe, or is that in our minds, in our imagination? Are we taking our Wild West in the space as well, or are we capable of more democratic collaboration?
I also wonder regularly whether moving into space with our current type of consciousness will actually be possible at all. Are we able to expand to other planets if we don't evolve? Space Odyssey, as you remember, begins with a very very developed human settlement on the moon, from which mission moves to Jupiter. And that was assumingly 20 years ago, according to the idea of Clark, right? We're still not anywhere near. Something happened, as if we discovered some kind of blockage to the possibility of really moving into space so fast. And I wonder if that blockage really lies not with our technological possibilities, but really with our minds. And part of the story, of course, is that the energy for the initial impetus, for initial momentum to move into space, which was driven by this rivalry between USSR and US, it was lost. Once the Soviet Union collapsed, there was no more motive for showing off that you are able to conquer beyond planet. With this industrialistic mindset, humanity started to search for new rationale. And there were two basic reasons that it started started to discover. They were both very expansionist. One was space colonies, another was mining. And there was an idea that overpopulation is going to be like a huge problem. That scenario didn't happen. The growth of population started to slow down. In terms of space mining, that is not really a good rationale for moving humans into space, because we start to discover that even if space mining occurs, it probably will be done by unmanned vehicles. What remains? What remains at the moment with this industrialist, let's say, mindset are two other rational visions. One of them is seeing near space, primarily space barely beyond our planet, as a sort of entertainment. Another thing is seeing near space as kind of service for the humanity. Of course, when we think about longer term perspective, it's driven by two things. One is what the late Stephen Hawking was expressing, was the idea that we basically are putting all eggs into one basket, or one basket being our planet. It's too risky because we can destroy that planet with all the technologies we have, so we have to escape. So Elon Musk has a different rationale. He's talking more about his dream of exploring the frontier and pushing the frontier, and he's probably more like an idealist. There is a huge engineering challenge ahead of us to really put human on the surface of a different planet in a sustainable way. But the main problem is not engineering and physical challenges to put humans into space. The main problems is how do we sustain in space? How do we survive in space? And these challenges are both biological, social, and psychological. And in my opinion, they represent 3/4 of problems of becoming a space species. So space, as we understand it today, is really in need of a new rationale. And we have to get real that doing it the way that we were doing it in the industrialist mindset of the 20th century will not sustain very long. We have to find a totally different way of organizing what I call not even a space project, but more like a space movement. We have huge challenges back on planet Earth with the sustainability of our way of living, a disrupted balance with the biosphere, existential threats that even our technology represents, and so on. We understand that these problems aggravate because we are living in the age of great acceleration, where we are really speeding up. It's a little bit of a hubris, let's say, to talk of ourselves as the only steering wheel of that spaceship Earth. Why not why not whales? Why not dolphins or sequoias? They're equally maybe wise beings that govern big parts of this planet, maybe creating more impact than we do. How to guide our own planet, and how can we move to other planets without it? This is why we really need to talk, when we talk about this shift to space species, we need to talk about the evolution of consciousness and moving to a new level of stability. And that is what becomes possible. We are in an evolutionary crisis right now, and it's getting aggravated, and we probably are coming to some kind of bifurcation point very, very soon. The choice is being made now, whether we are really moving towards catastrophic scenarios, non-reversible collapse of biosphere, climate crisis that becomes a climate emergency and climate collapse of a kind, or we are transiting that, finding new ways of living on this planet and moving towards that higher, let's say, level of organizing ourselves in harmony with the planet. My argument would be that space exploration, expanding into space, and the real expansion into space begins here on planet Earth. And it begins not really with engineers that are designing new rockets. It begins with totally different groups of people that are looking for ways of finding balance with nature and creating regenerative and thrivable economies. It begins with people who seek to restore balance between technologies and humankind. And of course, it's also about the shifting our level of consciousness to truly become a space species. One of the essential competences or capacities that we need to cultivate to really get there, to become a space species, is a peacemaking capacity. If we learn how to be in peace with ourselves, between ourselves, and with the planet, this is a crucial condition for becoming a space species. I think we will truly become the space species if and only if we learn how to live on this planet, how to operate spaceship Earth. There are different possibilities. Of course, one of them is that we forget about space. And for example, if we make a paradise on Earth, why move anywhere? We are learning to become a different species that really is adapted to space. We can also probably become a solar forming species. So long-term relationship with space is that we might become even what we call a radiant humanity, the humanity that exists in more like in energy form and doesn't require a body, but like can sustain for basically indefinitely in this radiant humanity form. We need to look at space, moving into space, and ourselves becoming a species as a kind of anchor point, the invitation for ourselves to evolve beyond who we are. If we start moving there, the intermediary plateau is to learn how to thrive on planet Earth and how to turn planet Earth into much more friendly and thriving world for everyone.
What is this next step of our species evolution as a species?
Well, I think well, there are several dimensions of this evolution that probably will happen. One of them is to recognize that we are not evolving as a species in disconnected from the rest of biosphere. Evolution of humanity in the last at least the last 100,000 years was not morphological, was not about changing our bodies. It was on the level of connections, on the forms, in forms of cooperation, in forms of culture and technologies we are using. So my vision is that we are actually moving more towards what in the past was called like a global brain. I think global brain is only one part of the body. We more like a more global interconnected consciousness where we don't dissolve in that consciousness, where we sort of by actually evolving to become full human beings, living to our full potential in the connected way with other human beings and eradicating all kind of traumas that make us disconnected. We learn to become like a whole being, let's say. And I think this is also maybe something that is awakening of that godlike consciousness in us. Both brain-computer interfaces and artificial intelligence could be designed in the way to support this process.
Adaptation is part of evolution, but there are three ways we can adapt. We can either adapt the world to us. Some have swung the pendulum in the opposite direction and say, no, we should try to adapt ourselves to the world. Co-adapting is the learning to dance with. So yes, technology does shape us and we shape it, but not in a way that takes us away from nature. Evolution is changing our relationships.
The more we see others as rivals, the more we need some strong hand or few selected members of our society to govern us. We need to learn how to accept and offer the support. I guess COVID crisis was both the testament of our low ability to do it, but also an ability to do it in many other regards.
Where is the ethics and morality fits in? Is there still space for that?
Everything is based on values that are driving us. And motivation that we follow, the ethics and morality that becomes more inclusive of different ways of being, of different mindsets, of different cultures. It's absolutely crucial that we evolve our ethic and morality to be a driving force of the next civilization we are moving into.
Maybe we need to start, not with everyone, not like with like the whole systems approach, but we need to pioneer also the questions of expanding the concept of, let's say, sustainability, regenerative living systems beyond the boundary of this one planet we inhabit today.
How do we change our planet? How do we change other planets? How do we change space? You know, fundamentally, I think the challenge is to see ourselves as the systems that need to be changed. We don't need to try to solve everything by ourselves. This is where the collective intelligence, we can start to be collectively intelligent. But it's not just a question of collective intelligence here, it's the intelligence of the heart.
The next civilization will be relationship-based civilization.
The space conversation need to be demonopolized from these power structures, and we also need to decolonize these conversations. It seems that we all are in agreement that moving into space is a matter of evolution of consciousness. We can see becoming a space species as a possible evolutionary attractor for ourselves, and that invites us to all take responsibility for that conscious evolution. We are not passive observers. We are active co-creators of that process. This conversation needs to be brought not only in our circle, it needs to be extended, brought to those people who now run the conversation on narrative for space, like engineers and R&D communities, policymakers, innovators and businesses. We probably need to start with learning different patterns of action, creating labs of human relationship labs, like living labs you were talking about, which allow us to do this kind of things, the evolutionary learning communities that can expand into what we can call evolutionary learning ecosystems.
Be the systems we want to see in the world.
Something beautiful will continue to emerge. Don't hold back with hugs, because the energy has to float.